filed in federal district court yet another lawsuit against the Oregon Youth Authority based on plaintiffs that have been sexually abused by Dr. Gary Edwards at OYA's McLaren facility. Now, this complaint that we filed yesterday has 11 more individuals abused by Dr. Edwards. These victims were as young as 12 years old when the abuse began, and many of these victims were abused multiple times by Dr. Edwards. The abuse happened between 2000 and 2017, and like the 5 lawsuits previously filed, this lawsuit contains allegations that Dr. Edwards would fondle the boys' genitalia, masturbate them, and digitally penetrate them in the anus. This lawsuit also contains an allegation that Dr. Edwards performed oral sex on a 13-year-old boy, telling that boy that it was medically necessary. To date, this lawsuit brings the total victims to 62 victims that we have filed on behalf of, and we are still hearing from victims today. Now, we filed our first lawsuit back in March, and when we filed that first lawsuit and we were here in front of you all, we had mentioned that there was a culture at OYA that allowed the sexual abuse to not only happen, but to thrive. Since then, in the 6 months from the point that we filed that case, we have talked to close to 100 victims. We have reviewed whistleblower court documents, and we've talked to maybe a dozen former OYA employees. And what we've discovered is the culture was actually something different from that. Really, what we found is that there is a cover-up culture at OYA. We intend to prove that over the last 2 decades, in fact, the OYA has worked hard to cover up the sex abuse that has happened inside their walls, whether that sex abuse was between kids that were incarcerated there, or whether it involved staff that was sexually abusing the youth. Our hope is that we take this and that we put this in the public eye. Our hope is that with these lawsuits, we change OYA's cover-up culture. Now, because of the cover-up culture that we have seen with the OYA, the result has been that OYA has effectively silenced victims. As I mentioned before, we've spoken with somewhere around 100 survivors over the last few months. And the truth of the matter is that these victims are just really realizing the profound harm they suffered and the state's role in causing that harm. Frankly, many of these kids at the time were confused by Dr. Edwards and what he did to them. Many had no idea that the state was well aware of the danger posed by Dr. Edwards. And many pushed the abuse and the trauma down somewhere deep and out of their mind just so that they could survive. Often the victims did not even realize they were suppressing the trauma that they suffered. We have survivors coming to us all the time, both now and in the months leading up to now, who really are confronting the trauma for the first time. Just now, they're coming to grips with what they had to go through in terms of the sexual abuse and realizing the role that OYA played in allowing that abuse to happen. I personally, just speaking for myself, I've seen people in front of me that I would call tough guys who are breaking down in front of me, crying because of the shame they feel and because they're frankly confronting it for the first time. And it's clear that they just haven't been able to process or frankly even think about what they've gone through. Now, the truth is, no one should be surprised by this. The entire time that these survivors were at McLaren, when they were boys, they were told that they couldn't trust their own sense of right or wrong, that what Dr. Edwards was doing was just his job. Sometimes they were even punished for even raising it up or raising it to somebody, including being thrown into solitary confinement. And for those who persisted, they were just told that no one was going to believe them because they were criminals. So if nothing else is accomplished by these suits, Our hope is that at very least, we can be proud that these brave survivors had a chance to confront their trauma and are empowered by this process. So at the end of this, we're going to do a little Q&A, but I wanted to give both Peter and Kendall a chance to comment as well. Thank you.
Good morning, folks. Peter Jancy from the Crew Jancy Law Firm. Well, as my colleague mentioned, this is now the 6th lawsuit that we have filed, bringing the victim count that we represent with filed cases to 62. And during that time, we have heard from a number of former OIA staffers who have shared with us information that corroborates our clients' accounts, not only of the abuse, but also of the information that was known to the state and the state's response or lack of response to the clear danger that was posed by Dr. Edwards. We have heard from numerous OIA former staffers that confirm that youth reported to them. Youth reported that Dr. Edwards would always touch their genitals during medical exams, regardless of the reason that they were there, whether it was a runny nose, an earache, or just to get medication. Youth reported that Dr. Edwards would ask other staff to leave the exam area so that he could be alone with them. And many youth reported to other McLaren staff that they didn't want to be alone with Dr. Edwards, that they didn't want to go to medical visits with him, and in fact, some flat out refused to go back to Dr. Edwards, even if it meant that they faced punishment. Former OIA staff have also confirmed to us that in response to this information, they would encourage youth to write written complaints about Dr. Edwards, that they would report their concerns to nurses that were working alongside Dr. Edwards, that they would pass information up the chain to managers. But despite all of that, what we have yet to hear from any of these former OIA staff is that they contacted law enforcement or asked for any type of investigation or accountability for Dr. Edwards. Multiple OIA former staff have confirmed to us that they believe there was a culture that favored handling these situations internally and quietly. Multiple OIA former staffers that we have spoken with us have told us that they are not surprised at all by the lawsuits that we are bringing, and that if they are surprised by anything, it's that it has taken this long for victims to feel comfortable coming forward. In addition to the former OIA staffers and the information that they've shared with us, we also know that the state had concrete reports of abuse because we have recently confirmed that a report was made to OIA that was referred to law enforcement in 2007, 10 years plus before Dr. Edwards was removed from his position. So we know that there was a report made to law enforcement, we believe by a victim or a family member, and that despite that, and despite OIA being aware of that, Dr. Edwards was left in his position with unfettered access to youth for another 10 years. I'm going to allow my colleague Kendall Spinella to make a few comments, and then I'm going to come back up and share a little bit about some other recent developments in this larger litigation, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to talk about how in this lawsuit we've also identified another perpetrator at McLaren. This perpetrator's name was Susan Baumgartner. She was a gym teacher at McLaren for, we believe, between 2001 to 2002. And she sexually abused at least one minor boy in OIA custody, although according to witnesses, there were likely other victims of her abuse as well. Baumgartner approached a youth while he was changing, began flirting with him, began touching his penis, and ultimately performed oral sex on him. She continued this abuse toward this minor boy almost every time he attended gym class for the next month. And she bribed him not to tell anyone by offering him chewing tobacco. It's our understanding that this client was not the only victim of Susan Baumgartner at McLaren, based on witnesses confirming that at one point there was a fight that broke out at McLaren between two other male victims of Susan Baumgartner. This brought her abuse to light. But rather than fire her or report the abuse to the police, OIA leadership allowed her to resign quietly and with little accountability. When our client tried to seek help from OIA staff and leadership to address the abuse, he was told to forget about it and not to bring it up again. As we hear about more and more perpetrators in OIA, perpetrators of sexual violence against these boys, it further confirms the unacceptable cover-up culture that my colleagues have been speaking about today, that was not only allowed in OIA, but encouraged by the leadership there. Thank you.
So there are a few other big picture developments that have that are occurring in the larger litigation by victims of sexual abuse within OIA that we want to share with you. As we mentioned, we filed lawsuits on behalf of 62 victims of Dr. Edwards. There are a number of other lawsuits that have also been initiated, which, as our understanding at this point, is the total number of filed cases alleging abuse by Dr. Edwards alone is over 70. I believe it's 71 or 72 victims. Those cases, regardless of whether they started in state court or were initiated in federal court, have been now all removed by the state to federal court. So all those cases are in federal court. They've recently been assigned to the chief judge of the federal district court here in Oregon. We recently, just this week, had a consolidated hearing on all of those cases in front of the chief judge. And probably the two most notable developments there are that the court has set clear expectations that discovery, that production of documents needs to proceed with speed. And we have our first trial date. The first trial of the Dr. Edwards cases will occur in November, the beginning of November in 2026. To that we say we will be ready, and we look forward to the opportunity for members of our community to hear this evidence and to make their own determination about these cases. That's our prepared remarks, but we're happy to answer questions. Maybe ask my colleagues to come up so we can all be close to the microphones and available to you all to the extent you have questions.
I'm just wondering, I'm new to this, so I'm
Sure.
trying to catch up real quick. There's no statute of limitations because we're saying how long ago it was. Is that something you have to worry about with how long it took?
Yeah. So Oregon has special statutes of limitations when it comes to child abuse, and we also recognize, just as a common law principle, that individuals should be allowed to bring suit when they discover the harm that they've suffered, and also when they discover that their harm was caused by a particular defendant. And so we're in a situation now where information is just coming to light about what the state knew about this danger and what they failed to do. And so we're confident that the statute of limitations argument is very strong for our clients.
Okay. And then I want to bring it.
That's okay. We can come back to you.
My question is for Peter Jancy. You mentioned the one report that was made to law enforcement. Are you at liberty to share which agency that report was made to?
Oregon State Police.
Oregon State because it happened at McLaren?
That's our understanding, is that at that time, the Oregon State Police would be charged with investigating allegations of custodial sexual abuse that happened in a state-run facility.
Now, all these cases were moved to a federal, or does that mean they're all going to be tried as one, or is this going to be case after case after case, or is it like the situation where it becomes a class action lawsuit type thing?
Yeah, it's not a class action, but how the trials will proceed is up to the discretion of the judge, and it's unclear at this point. we certainly anticipate that and believe that it'll be most efficient to try multiple plaintiffs' cases in the same trial, but how that gets sequenced remains to be seen. So.
You have a date set, but that's, you guys are ready. That doesn't mean the state's ready. It's not a solid date, I guess I'm going to get at. It's
Well,
a solid date for you guys.
The date is set and it is solid, and I think all the parties understand that they need to be ready to start trial in November of 26.
To that point, you've mentioned obviously the large number of victims that have continued to come forward. If there's a victim who resonates with this story, what's your advice to them?
Well, we're certainly available to hear from folks that have suffered this type of violation and abuse. Whether victims contact an attorney or reach out to mental health therapists, we just encourage folks not to suffer alone, to reach out for support, whether it's a support group, a mental health therapist, an attorney to understand their rights. But so many of these victims have lived with this silently for so long. And what we're hearing and seeing from the folks that we're talking to is it means so much to speak up about what happened and to know that they're not alone and that this wasn't their fault and that this was abuse. One of the dynamics we're seeing in this case, I think, is because this was a doctor at such a venerated position, there was a lot of deference given to Dr. Edwards when there shouldn't have been, when the warning signs, we believe, were very clear.
Obviously, you're looking for punitive and criminal damages, but what else do you hope that comes out of this so it doesn't happen again? What steps are you guys putting in or are you asking for?
Absolutely. Well, our client's primary concern is making sure that kids in OIA are safer today and tomorrow. And, we're still in the information gathering stage. I think you have to understand the ins and outs of historically how this happened to be able to then have the prescription for how do we fix this going forward. So, but we intend to work with our clients to review the evidence that we gather and to put forward, our views about what needs to change going forward.
I mean, I've unfortunately had to cover a couple similar things to this, but I've never seen numbers this big. What does that say to you? The amount of victims?
This was someone who, despite clear warning signs, was given deference for nearly a 45-year career, and was given unfettered access to a huge population of people. And as we all know from seeing lots of these situations, these types of pedophiles, they don't stop at one. They keep going unless the responsible adults who are around them take action. And that is clearly what was missing here.
Kendall, you mentioned that you believe that there may be other victims of Susan Baumgartner. Do you believe there also might be other perpetrators that you guys haven't yet identified?
Definitely. We have people calling us all the time. These kids are grown now and they are seeing the news and they're identifying with what they're hearing, and they're saying that's my experience too, and it's encouraging more people to come forward and say that happened to me. And it's not just Dr. Edwards, it's other people too. And we filed some cases against other perpetrators already, and I would not be surprised because of the culture that we were talking about, the cover-up culture. This was a place where people could go and get away with abusing kids, so it would not surprise me if there were more perpetrators out there who were never held accountable.
Thank you. And a quick follow-up. To be clear, to your knowledge, do you know if Baumgartner faced any criminal charges or was reported at all to law enforcement?
I don't know.
I don't think we know yet at this stage. But connecting that to an earlier question that was asked, we are seeing, even I think just last week or the week before, there was another OIA staffer who is facing criminal charges unrelated to these cases. And we're encouraged by that. We believe that these cases are putting a spotlight on the agency. They are encouraging folks to come forward, and we're hopeful that there will be a healthy effect of rooting out individuals who are continuing to abuse kids at OIA.
Just for the record, can criminal charges be brought against the doctor and the PE coach, or has that expired? And are they even still with us? I already know the answer, but I just
Sure.
need a soundbite from it.
Well, unfortunately, no criminal charges will be brought against Dr. Edwards because he passed away shortly before we initiated this litigation. As to other perpetrators, I think it's sort of outside of our purview to do that analysis, but we're hopeful that the district attorneys in the areas where the abuse happened are paying close attention to this. We're encouraged by the Marion County District Attorney, who has opened a grand jury investigation into the conditions at McLaren. And so we certainly, and our clients certainly, support every legal mechanism being applied to root out abuse within Oregon Youth Authority.
Yeah. I just want to add one thing too, which is the 20,000-foot view here is, it's no coincidence really that over the last year, OIA has suddenly been in the news in a way it hasn't been before. And I'd like to think a lot of that has to do with all of our clients, these plaintiffs coming forward, right? Telling their stories, telling their truth, because at the end of the day, light on the situation, focus on the situation is really going to be the best way to change this cover-up culture. And we've seen it in multiple places. Peter mentioned the fact that the Marion DA has opened grand jury. That's one. We know that there's been a sort of an investigation into the fact that there were thousands of complaints that were never looked into by OYA. We've seen the governor put in place an ombudsman. Those are things that don't just happen necessarily on their own. They happen when these victims come forward and say their truth. And so, speaking for me personally, I think that at the very least, there's a start here, and I take a lot of pride in these clients showing such courage. So.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
I've got one from online from Maxine Bernstein. She asked, what happened with the one person's report about Dr. Edwards to Oregon State Police? Did they investigate?
Our understanding at this point is that there was an investigation by OSP, and we are working to try to get access to that investigation. So more to come. All right. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.